get that started here. All right, so I am recording. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Laura Crawford, and today's presentation is going to be on best practices for SharePoint project site templates. This is actually a cool subject to cover. I enjoy this one. So there's a lot of neat features out there in SharePoint that we'll share with you, some things that you may not have even known were there and readily available to you. So let's make sure that you're aware of them, and we'll give you some ideas and recommendations as well. Okay, so from here, let's go over our introduction here. All right, so I'm going to start with a little bit about who I am and who PPM Works is, and then from there, I'll go ahead and get started with project sites. I'm going to show you how to do some configuration to get started, and then we'll also get into creating a project site template. We'll talk about the 6 steps for a successful project site template, so our recommendations to you, and then we'll give you some new ideas for your organization. So by the time you're done with this presentation, you should know how to get started in creating that site template, and also some new ideas for things that you may not have thought of and that you can take away from this right away. We'll go ahead and save the very end for our question and answer. I do try and monitor the chat window while I'm presenting, but it's hard. I kind of minimize a lot of things so that they're not clouding up my screen and dragging things to other monitors. So sometimes things go unnoticed, and I don't want you to think I'm ignoring you. I have muted everybody just so that we don't get some background noise. If you joined me on some of my previous presentations, there was always somebody that would be eating or having a sidebar conversation. So I do welcome your participation and your questions. I will save them for the end, though. This way we can spend a good 10 minutes or more answering those questions. And if no one has any questions, you'll get a few minutes back in your day. All right. Okay, so a little bit about me. I am a senior PPM specialist at PPM Works. I have, over 8 years experience now. I need to update this slide. I've been living, eating, and breathing in this tool. So I fill out a timesheet every week. I also create project plans based on signed statements of work. I go ahead and manage those plans, assign resources, run status reports, you name it. So we actually live, eat, and breathe in the tool. We use it on a daily basis. So any questions that you may have, I'm certainly here to give you my best practice approach, as well as my personal experience, etc. So all of us live, eat, and breathe in the tool that are on the team. That gives us the opportunity to bring that real world experience to you, which I think is very important. It's one thing to understand configuration and how things are set up and be up to date and current on the changes, but it's completely different when you're actually using the tool and you know how things really work. All right, so this is just an overview of some of our clients and a little bit of our background. We are a gold certified partner with Microsoft. That's a huge competency to attain if you're not familiar with our organization. That means that I have taken all the certification exams for Project Professional and Project Server configuration for, I started in 2000 with the tool back in 2007. So I've taken certifications for 7, 10, 13, and 16. So all of us have to maintain those competencies on our team in order to achieve that status. And then I interview our customers to see if we are what we say we are. So making sure that we're delivering as promised and making sure that we're up to those gold standards. So feel free to reach out to us. We do a lot of training, as you see today's webinar. We do have those, so check in with us from time to time to see what's upcoming. I did look at our site. I know we have a couple on the January site, but we need to expand that to include February and March. So I'll make sure that our marketing team gets out there and displays all that information to you so that you're ready to register for the next one. So in addition to doing training and webinars, of course, we're consultants. So we do everything from implementing, installing Project Server, or helping you implement Project Online, configuring, reporting, customization, integration with other tools. And then we do create role-based training to make sure that we give you the tools to be able to manage everything going forward. We don't want to leave you wondering what to do next. All right, so ask questions at the end. Happy to help you. Again, my name is Laura Crawford. You can always email me. If you have any questions, after today's webinar, you might be trying some of the things you see. If you have a question or would like a recording of today's webinar, feel free to email us at info@ppmworks.com. We'd be happy to respond to those emails, send you the recording of today's webinar. And we do have other webinars that were recorded as well. We try and record all of them. All right, so our session goals today: improve collaboration on your project teams. So we're going to show you some tips and tricks to kind of get you started. Also, you should be able to walk away from this being able to implement at least one or two of the ideas that we're going to cover, and then making the most of your time. We realize that this may be your lunch break, could be dinner, depending upon where you're calling in from around the world, but we want to make sure that we get you in and out in an hour and give you the most information that we possibly can. All right, so what are project sites? Project sites were formerly known as project workspaces, so if you are using an older version of Project Server, you're accustomed to the term of project workspace. Sometimes they're called project team sites. They are SharePoint sites. Now, SharePoint is the foundation of Project Online and Project Server. So if you have an on-site installation and you're joining us, I may be referencing Project Online, and that's only because the demo environment that I'll be showing you today is Project Online. But everything that I'll be covering is applicable to either. I'll show you some differences in where the configuration might be located in on-premise versus Project Online. But all of this, whether you're having an on-premise installation or whether you are using Project Online, it's all built upon SharePoint. So everything that we show you today, that's why it makes it nice and easy and very easy to collaborate. All right, so these team sites are actually project sites or sub-sites of your main site. All right, so they're accessible through Project Web App. All right, so logging into your PWA instance, regardless, again, if it's on site or in the cloud, and connecting to your project site. All right, so lots of collaboration available. You'll see that when we get into demoing the tool. You can track issues, risks, your document repositories, etc. Everything can be easily accessed from these project sites. So let's talk a little bit about what's on the default project site. We're going to jump into the tool in just a moment. There are some default settings that when you create a brand new project site, they're there for you. You don't have to add. It's not a blank slate. So the things that are captured in the screenshot on the quick launch on the left-hand side, home, notebooks, documents, tasks, etc. These are all the defaults on the project site. So these are the default settings. If you create a project site for a project, these will all be available and ready to go for you. The home is where you see your project summary or timeline web card. That is the home navigation for the project site. The notebook is OneNote. So if you have a team meeting and you want to go to use your notebook there, you can access that. Everyone on the team has access to it, take meeting notes, etc., take away some action items, and then email those notes right out after your meeting. Very easy to do that right there from that notebook that's already there on the team site. Your documents, it's your library for all your project files and any other collateral that you're storing there. So there's quite a, I'll show you some of the things that you can do with the document library that'll assist you and help you keep track of all your documents. The tasks, this is a list of project tasks. We typically sync it with the PWA schedule so that when new tasks are added to the schedule or updated, you see that information directly on the project site. So you can sync the task list on the project site with that project schedule. Your calendar, this is for tracking events outside of the project schedule. You may see that notebook and calendar are in black where everything else is highlighted in blue. That's indicating that anything in blue has integration with that Project Web App schedule. So the project schedule, once it's published, will integrate with everything that's here in blue. So calendar is not in blue. So I get asked a lot when folks see that calendar link there on a project site, a lot of times they jump in and think, hey, if I click on this, am I going to see all the tasks in the calendar view like I would in Outlook? And that's not the case. It actually is blank by default. And it's really the purpose for that calendar. You do have a task list, again, that's visible on the project site. But the calendar here is really to track events outside of the project schedule. So maybe you want to track vacation time for your team, or maybe you want to account for team meetings or other maybe training or out of office scheduled events that you want to track for the team. That can be done here using that calendar. Deliverables are linked to projects, so you can set a list of project deliverables. So you could have a deliverable here on this project site that's linked to a different project. Issues and risks. All right, so you have issues, something that may be happening, and a risk is something that is impacting your project. All right, and then you have the ability to these default lists there. And actually, I just said that backwards. I'm sorry. So you have a risk which has the potential to impact your project plan, and then the issue is it is now happening here in the project. So being able to capture those risks to develop a mitigation plan to prevent it from becoming an issue is a huge part of project management. So they have these default lists there that are built into project sites. So what I have here is just a screenshot of a default project site. All right, so the only thing that's changed on here, I should probably point out, is we've put our logo on the default site. By when you create a default site, it typically has the project emblem there, and you can certainly add your company corporate logo to your project site to create some branding. All right, so I'm going to get into the demo now. All right, so let me go ahead and exit my slideshow here. All right, okay, so let me jump back a moment here and start back here. All right, so the easiest way and the easiest thing to do, there are some settings that we'll adjust. Let me get into those next so that we can talk through these first. Project site settings, you have some options that are available to you. Now, let me drag this back over for one moment. No, I'll show you in the tool. Sorry, I'm jumping back and forth into how I want to demonstrate this, but I'd rather do it right here in the tool. So let me show you in PWA settings. This is a project online environment, so I'll point out where this is found in project server on premise. But if I scroll down, you'll see here under workflow and project details pages, I have a list of enterprise project types. Now in my demo environment, we have more than the default project types. Your defaults are your SharePoint task list and basic project or enterprise project. Those are just the defaults. Anything else that you see here was something that we've created either for demonstration or testing purposes in here. So those are have been created by us here at PPM Works. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a basic project here, this enterprise project type. These enterprise project types, in case you're not familiar with what they are, each of these can have a unique project schedule template associated with it. They can also have a project site template associated with it, along with what we call project detail pages. If I scroll down, you'll see that there are project details pages that are associated with this particular project type. Each of those project types may have different project details pages. So you might have a very simple project where you really just need some project information. Just tell me the name of your project, the start date, and who owns it, and that's all. Or you may have more complex projects that require some more detail, all right? So, but if I scroll down, and this is actually new, folks, so if you're not, this used to be a setting under connected SharePoint sites and Project Online. This is now accessible here under the enterprise project type. And let me explain that for a moment. So what that means is that I can now dictate to project whether or not, based on the project type, whether I should automatically create a site on the next publish, whether I should allow a user to choose, or whether I do not create sites at all. All right, the default is to allow the users to choose, so it doesn't automatically create a project site each time. All right, so I can do this again based on the project type. So I don't have to, previously, before last fall, I think this change occurred in, no, actually I think it was back in May 2017. Prior to that, you would set the setting globally. So depending, it didn't matter whether I had a complex project or a simple project, it would either never create a site or automatically or allow someone to choose. But now again, you can pick based on the type of project that you're creating. So this setting has been moved. So now it's located here, again, under the Enterprise Project Type page. Now where this is located, if you have an on-premise solution, so you have Project Server installed somewhere on a site, you would actually go through SharePoint Central Admin. All right, so these settings here are located under the SharePoint Central Admin section. All right, so that's where you would go. You would actually go to SharePoint Central Admin. You would select Manage Service Applications. You would click on Project Server. You would click on the PWA instance, and then you would see these same settings here. All right, so let me actually drag it over so that, let me just bring this over here real quick so we can just talk about that for a second. So if you're using Project Server, you're going to go through SharePoint Central Admin. So it wouldn't be under Server Settings, Enterprise Project Types. You'd have to go through SharePoint Central Admin, and these are the steps that you would follow. You'd select the URL, and then again, you would select whether or not the project is automatically published, etc. All right, get that out of our way again. All right, so I think this is pretty neat that they moved this over here. All right, and again, it's a project type by project type decision, and not just for all projects that are published here. Why you might want to just let someone choose versus automatically creating? We actually we actually recommend that you allow users to choose, because when you allow them, when you automatically create it, there are some things that you need to consider, all right? Large number of project sites could possibly slow down the security group sync, all right? So if you have, like, think about if you have, let's say, hundreds of projects out there, and each project may contain 25 documents, and the documents can have an average size of 100 kilobytes, and there's maybe 10 saved revisions. All right, so it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. All right, now if you have a single project online instance, the maximum is currently 25 terabytes. So if you're concerned about a large number of sites and running out of disk space requirements, you may consider to allow users to choose. If you're a smaller organization and you don't have a lot of project sites or a lot of documents being stored out there and you're just getting started, you can go ahead with the automatically create on next publish. All right, but those are just some things to take into consideration when deciding whether or not you want to automatically publish or not, and why. All right, let me scroll down here. At the end, let me go up here a little bit, sorry. This is the task list that I just referenced on that slide a few slides ago, where I said you can display a task list on a project site. I'm going to show you this in just a moment in the tool, but this is the sync button. There's two buttons that you'll see here: sync user permissions and sync SharePoint task list. These are two other checkboxes to consider. Syncing the user permissions, when you create a project and you put resources on the team, they don't have to have any task assignments, but if you have this checkbox synced, or selected, to sync enabled, once you publish that project, the permissions from SharePoint will sync with the permissions in Project Server, or PWA, and users that are on the project team will get access to the project site. So you don't have to manually grant permissions to users. It's automatically done for you, all right? So that's what that checkbox does. This next checkbox says that if I have a project schedule that's published and I'm updating it, if I have this checkbox selected, when I make changes, when tasks are completed, maybe the duration's extended or maybe shortened, etc., that information gets updated in the project task list on the project site as well. So if I'm syncing that. If this is deselected, updates to the project schedule will not translate to the task list in the SharePoint list. All right. All right, we're going to talk about this in a moment, but you'll see that there's the option here to set a project site template for this project type. That's also a great setting in that I can create different project site templates for different types of projects. So maybe we have specific documentation that's related to one type of project, and then we have another project that never uses that documentation. We can create a site template for one project and associate it here so that every time that project's created, the document templates are there stored in the project site. And then the other project site may have nothing, all right? All right, so I'm going to cancel out of here because I didn't make any changes. So let me just do a quick review of what we did here. So from within the enterprise project type, we selected how we selected the project site settings. So in this case, we're going to auto create a project site on publish. Every time a new project's created and published, we're going to create that site automatically. We also are syncing our task list on the project site. We're syncing our user permissions as well. All right, and that's all done from here, again, enterprise project types. All right. Okay, so enough of me rambling on and on. Let's go ahead and start talking about creating a project site template. All right, so I'm going to navigate to Project Center. So why would you even think about customizing a default project site? You know, what is the purpose and why do I want to spend the time doing it? Well, for one thing, incorporate your best practices. All right, so if you have specific templates for a business charter or a change request, and you want to make sure that everyone's consistently using the correct templates, that would be one reason. Also, the sites can have a consistent user interface from site to site, so it's consistent. When you jump from one project site to another, you know where everything is located. Also, fulfill project tracking requirements. I'll show you some ideas for a benefits register. If you are using Project Online or even, you know, Project Server, PWA, in any form, you'll note that when you're trying to track, able to do that in a project detail page because it doesn't give you that table where you can look at your benefits for Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, etc. So that would be one idea too, to fulfill some tracking requirements that you may have on the actual project site. Another one is to improve adoption. If we make it nice and easy and everyone knows where to go and a single source of truth, they're going to be more apt to use these sites, right? If they're not sure where to go and sites are very different from one to the other, that could certainly cause some, you know, you're going to not get as much buy-in there. All right, and also stakeholders, right? So if you're going to bring content to a project site and make it real easy for them to find what they're looking for, that high-level information, they're going to appreciate that, and they're going to use those sites. All right, so what I'm showing you here is there are some icons next to this Gold Lab project. This is letting me know that I do have issues, risks, and documents associated with this particular project there at my project site. So I can certainly use those quick links to get there. That's another reason if you do use that document library or issue risk tracking, you get these nice helpful shortcuts right here to bring you to the project site. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about creating that project site and the steps to doing so and how to do that successfully. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in and I'm going to go ahead to my basic project here. I'm going to select basic project and create a new project. The purpose of creating this new project is strictly to generate the site template. That's all I want to do, all right? So what I'm going to do is create a new project, which will then automatically create the project site, and that's because I have that checkbox selected already in the settings that we just looked at. I'm going to name it Project Site Template, so I know exactly why this is in here. The other thing that I usually do, and I'd recommend, is that put a date or some sort of, maybe the year, if you only do this once a year, etc. This is helpful because when you're associating the project site template with the project type, you don't want there to be any ambiguity over which is the most recent version. So it could be a version number, etc. But I just think this is helpful. This definitely helps me out. I'm going to leave it as me as the owner. So, actually, I clicked on browse. I just did not listen to my own self here. It'll default to me. And I'm going to go ahead and select finish. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a basic project type for me. It's going to tell me that up here. All right. And once it creates this basic project type, I'm going to navigate to the project site for this particular project so that I can start editing that site. All right. So that's the whole purpose of me creating this project, is to do just that. So I can create a fresh blank project site without any anything associated with it. So I'll go ahead and select project site from here. I'll check this in later. I'm not worried about that. I'm not going to update the schedule. There are no tasks associated with this. Let me just close this real quick. Give it a minute. Let me go to So we're going to go ahead and get rid of those. Make sure that we only have what's relevant. So if you're not using all the features, then you can remove them. All right, so finally published for me. So here we are. Oh, awesome. So let's just see what somebody did in here. So hopefully someone wasn't messing around in here. Let's see. There we go. Okay, perfect. Okay, never fails when you're doing a recorded webinar or demonstration. There's always a little faux pas there. So I just refreshed it and we're good to go. All right, so I have the name of my project site template up here. This is default. Again, aside from this, we do have this in here. So you'll generally have just the project icon here, and you can swap that out very easily. It really is just a matter of going to the cog wheel over here and going to your site settings from here, and title, description, and logo. All right, so title, description, and logo. Make sure you have the logo stored somewhere, either in SharePoint or on your computer, and you would select this and you would browse for it from, again, either from SharePoint or the computer, and then it'll pull in your logo. It'll actually give you a little preview of what it looks like, and then if you scroll down here, you would select OK. All right. You don't want a description because the description will display up here every single time you create a new site. So leave that blank. But again, that's real easy to bring in your logo. All right. So again, that was from site settings, title, description, and logo. And that's where you would find that. Another thing that you might want to do, you'll see change the look is here in site settings, but there's a shortcut to it right from here too. So the default is blue or green, depending upon which version you're using. But you can see how you can change any of the colors. So if you prefer to be in orange, I do have a customer right now that is, their colors are orange, so their sites are orange. So you can scroll through here and change the look. All right. Now, if this is a project site template that you're then applying to all sites that are being created, keep that in mind. Ladies, pink may be your favorite. Sorry, I shouldn't say ladies. I guess that was kind of sexist. It could be anybody, right? Pink may be your favorite color, but not everybody's. All right. So that's how you can change the look for your site setting there as well. Well, let me just go back to the home page here too. All right, and while this refreshes, you'll see there's getting started with your site. Remove this. This is something that you might want to remove. All right, so it's giving you some information here on how you can brand your site, etc. But this may not be something that everybody wants to see when they first create their project site. So you can certainly remove this. All right, so you would click on this. It will remove it for everybody. That means for everybody that comes to this project site, it won't be here anymore. I'll click OK because I don't need that on here. All right, now you'll see it just has my project summary, my news feed, and my documents. All right, and also take a look over here. If you don't think you're going to use the calendar, then you can remove it from here. You would select Edit Links. All right, and you'll see how you can remove the links from the navigation. All right, so anything that you think you might not use over here, you can get rid of. I'll cancel, I'll leave those all there. All right, so any extra site content, that's the first thing you're gonna wanna do. Is just get in here and remove it, do a little branding, maybe change the look and feel, and then now there'll be some other things that you'll wanna do. This is SharePoint, so one of the benefits to this is that you can create additional lists. You have a risk and issue list here, default out of the box. You can create other ones. So if you wanted to create an action item list, financial tracking register like we were just talking about, you can create any list, and you can also associate workflow with those lists. So very easy to create a SharePoint list and then associate a workflow. In order to create a list, let me just show you that. If I select the cogwheel, it's actually adding an app. All right, so I would add an app. It's going to bring me to the app page. And you'll see here that I have a custom list. So I would come in here, I can select custom list. It's going to load all the other apps too. There's more down here. All right, so if I wanted to create a new calendar, I can do that. If I wanted to insert links or hyperlinks in here, contacts, you could do that. All right, so maybe you want to have your project contact list in here, so everybody's email address and everything is right here. You can certainly grab that app. Custom list, it's going to ask me for name. I'll just go ahead and select action items. Select create. It's going to go ahead and create that new app for me. All right. And now it'll appear over here on my recent, and I can change that. I can move it so it's just above here if I needed to. But now it's here for me to start building upon. So I can select the action items. All right, and now you'll see the only thing that's in here is title. So I can come in here and I can start modifying my list settings. I'm not going to get into all the versioning and advanced settings, but I can start creating columns. I can say assigned to, all right, or owner, description, due date, status. Is it still open, completed, pending, in progress, etc. All right, so I can start creating and modifying that list. All right, because again, this is SharePoint. So anything that you need to assist in your team collaboration can certainly be added and created here. All right. So once you start adding and building custom lists with some custom fields, etc., you're going to eventually want to save the site as a template. But before I get ahead of myself, let's jump in here for a moment, because the risks and the issues, I want to talk about some strong do's and don'ts about these two lists. Your risk and your issue list have some default fields. You'll see some that are in this little quick edit view. And if I go ahead and select new item, you're going to see additional fields in here. all right, in this new item form. These fields should never, ever, ever be deleted. So if you think you're never going to use trigger description and trigger, or you think assign to and owner are one and the same, which not necessarily, but depending upon how you typically manage issues and risks, you might think we don't need this, or let's rename some of these to something that's more relevant to our organization. We have a current risk register that we're tracking in an Excel spreadsheet, and we want to keep the same naming convention. I don't even recommend that you rename any of the fields on this page, and you certainly cannot delete those. And because if you were to do that, you will break the site syncing. You actually will break the project site. It may not happen today. It might not happen next week, but eventually you're going to have a site sync failure, and you won't be able to access the sites. And if you have a lot of documentation in there, it's a mess. I speak from experience because I did this in a test environment, gosh, I want to say like 6 years ago, when I was more of a newbie to all this, tested it, assigned it to a project type, created a bunch of projects, created a bunch of risks, etc. Thought it worked great, implemented it in a customer's production, and 100 sites failed within about 48 hours. So I had to manually rebuild them. So painful lesson learned. So do not delete any of these fields. There's a way to hide them. All right, there's a way to hide them through content types. You would actually have to cancel out of here. I'll show you that real quick as a little tip, and then we'll move on. If I go to, nope, not here, I'm sorry. If we go over here to list settings. If we go to advanced settings and we allow management of content types, then we can hide fields. So this has to be on first, all right? And then you can hide those fields, but remember not to delete them, right? So I would select OK here. And now for my list settings, this was not visible a moment ago. This content type section was not here until I went ahead and enabled it. And now I can come here and I can modify, I can change the column order, and I can modify the view as well. All right, so I can then change and hide things, but don't delete. All right, so we can all agree that we're not going to delete any of these. All right, okay, so you're going to also want to do one more thing. Let me scroll down here real quick. Category. The category for both issues and risks is just a choice field that's blank. It says number 1, number 2, and number 3. All right. So these will need to be modified. So those who can safely edit, of course, Microsoft doesn't know how to categorize issues or risks. So you're going to want to come in here and you're going to want to make those changes. So even if you don't really do any other thing as far as changing anything on the project site, maybe you don't even do the branding, maybe you just like the default site, you do have to change the risk category and the issues category. Now, if I don't save this as a template, I'd have to do that every single time I create a new project site. The project manager would have to manually come here to the list settings, scroll down to the category field, open it up, and change and replace. Kind of a pain. I mean, if you want user adoption and buy-in, you're going to want to make this as simple for everybody, right? So much easier to do that for them so that they don't have to worry about that. All right, okay. So let's go back to my home page here. Again, you're going to want to do that for the issues too. It's the same thing. It's just a blank category. All right, so here we are, back to the home page. Let's pretend that I've done a bunch of, maybe I've even added some documents to this. Maybe there are some company documents that we need to read through each time we create a new project that are not specific to this particular project, but just some organization-wide governances that we follow, and I want to upload them to the project site. I can do that. I can go ahead and upload those documents here, and if I've done that, what I then could do is when I come to this cogwheel and I go to my site settings, I took my click. There we go. Goodness gracious, I don't have the permission. No, okay. Sorry, I'm not a site collection administrator apparently in my demo environment. But what we would see here under site actions, right over here, just above delete the site, would say save site as a template. All right, so it would be right here, and you would click on it, and then it'll give you the opportunity to name the template. I would stick with the naming convention that I've done here. So you're going to want to, you don't need the Z's in it. I only did this because when I create this project, I can delete the project, but leave the project site out there. So if I want to make some additional changes to this, I don't have to start from a blank site. I can start from an existing template and then make some changes, etc. DZ just makes it really easy for me to find this project so I can delete it out of this demo environment when I'm done. But I would want to name it something like this, project site template, no spaces, because then you get those percentages in there in the URL address. And then, again, the date, all right? So it's going to ask you for the name, template name, file name, and then it's going to ask you for a description. Leave the description blank. If you put a description in there, it'll actually be up top here. So if you put something like, use this for all project sites, it'll be here. It'll say right underneath the name, it'll say use this for all project sites. So just leave the description blank. And then there's one more checkbox that you would want to select, and that is include content. If you had uploaded documents to the document library and you wanted to include them with the template, you would select that. All right, so you can actually include documents or anything else that you have stored on the site with that site template. All right, so once I've gone ahead and I've created my project site the way I like it, I would go to my, again, this is right from here, the cogwheel, site settings, right under site actions, you'll see save site as a template. All right, so go ahead and select it, give it a name for the file and for the template name, leave description blank, include content if you have some documents in here that you want to always have visible in your project site. All right, and then you just click OK. You'll get a pop-up that says you have successfully, created a project site, which is now in your solutions gallery. And you can go to your solutions gallery to take a look at it. You don't need to, but that's where you would actually go to delete old ones if you needed to. All right, so okay, so let's pretend we've gone ahead, we've done all that, we've saved our project site as a template. Let me go back here to projects. Actually, once I'm back in projects, and I could have done a shortcut from here, PWA settings as well. Habit, I always use the quick launch, but let me go here, because the last step is to come back here, select the project type, and you'd have to do this for each one. All right, so again, going to that basic project type, scrolling down to where it says project site template, and making sure that we apply the new template that we've created to that particular project. All right, so let's see if this opens for me. All right, come on, thinking. It's the same screenshot that I showed you before, so if we get some delay here, we can always move on. All right, here we go. All right, so if I scroll all the way down, all right, site template. This is where I would find a list of project site templates in all different languages, and this is why you may want to either put a version number or a date, because it's not real clear on here which one is the most updated. So pick a naming convention that makes sense for your organization, and this way when you're in here, it saves you the step of having to figure out which is the most recent one. You would go ahead and save it, and then after that, every single time a project is created using that basic project type, or whatever project type I've selected, we're going to have our site template there. So I think that's a real big benefit to using site templates. All right, so let me swap this out real quick. what I want to show you too is some ideas. All right, so we talked through some of these. All right, so we talked about the do's and don'ts of risks and issues. All right, so again, don't delete. You can hide, but please don't delete any of those issues or risk columns. You can break the project site. You can modify those category values. So if you do nothing else on the project site, you're going to want to do that. The other thing is I didn't tell you, but document libraries, you can set revision numbers to specific revision number. We recommend 10. And then the quick launch. I said you can remove what you're not using. You can also use or add new ones as well. Let me show you one other thing now that I didn't show you. Let me go back to my, let me go back here. Go to projects and go to my project site real quick. One other thing that you might not be familiar with, or you might be a little bit confused, is the navigation. Let me just go in here real quick. If I go back to, let's say let's go to this Gold Lab project here. So now I have a project site. You can create a navigation link for up here as well. So you can select another navigation link that'll bring you back to Project Web App. All right, so you can edit these links up here. You can add a new one. That'll appear up here so that every time you're in a project site, if you want to go back to Project Center, you can click projects to go back there, but you can create a link up here to bring you back to wherever you're trying to get to. All right, so you can go in and edit. You can drag and drop a link. So if I have another web page open with my project link, I would just copy and paste it and then save it. All right, so I can quickly do that. All right, so it makes it nice and easy to navigate back and forth. So that was one thing I did not show you. Sorry about that. All right, and then if you're not using the notebook, you can disable the feature. We talked about that. Let me just get in here. Additional ideas. All right, so these are some different ideas that you may want to implement. We talked about how you could upload documents to a project site template, and you certainly can do that. But another thing that you could do is you can actually create custom content types. All right, so you'll see financial assessment, a project change request, or a project charter. The difference between a content library and just uploading templates in here is that when you go to create new from a document library, you have the option of creating it right from here, from these templates right here. All right, so you don't have to open up the document, then create do a save as and create it so you're not overwriting the template that's stored there in your document library. So the content type makes it nice and easy for the user to create a brand new document from one of the templates that you have out there. All right, so that's a great idea. Another thing is creating document library by phase. All right, so you'll see here initiation, planning, and execution. So if I'm in initiation, I know I need a project charter. If I'm in planning, maybe I need to update some financials in a spreadsheet, and maybe I have a change request coming through down the road. All right, so grouping those documents by phase. You also could create folders in here. I don't like folders, I'm going to be really honest with you, because they're hard. You have to open them up to see what's inside them. One person's logic might not be the other person's, so it can slow you down in locating things. I think it's much easier for you to create an attribute such as phase or column and select the phase that these documents are located in when you're uploading them or creating them from new so that they're easy to find. All right, I think folders is not a good approach when you're using SharePoint. It's much better to create a view that's grouped by a phase, stage, whatever makes sense for your organization. You can also configure, there's some default project Excel reports that are there for you. They're just templates, and you can configure a project highlight report if you needed to. And this is a web part that you can add to your project site. Adding this web part then would make this report viewable right there on your project site. So that's usually a good idea if you want to add something like that. All right. And then also approvals. If you have an approval list, you can create a simple workflow that sends, when you're done with your project charter, you go ahead, you update your project charter, or you add it to the list. Maybe it's just adding an item to the list, generates a new workflow, and then it gets sent to somebody for approval, and then they go ahead and approve it. All right, so that's another simple workflow, list workflow that you can create here. All right. Another thing too is, we can get really in the weeds about document retention, procedures, or I can't think of the word right now. Document retention workflow. So if a document's 2 years old, let's go ahead and get rid of it. All right, it gets copied into another SharePoint site. So that's another thing that you can do for your sites as well. This is an example of benefit tracking. So if you needed to track by year, the type of benefit, who the owner is, you can certainly do that on a SharePoint site a lot easier than you would necessarily be able to do in a project detail page, because it's difficult to be able to track across years. What I mean is, if you have a project level field for benefits, it's going to take one entry. You can't enter 500,000 for year 2016, and then you can't track 2017 and 2018, etc. It's usually one field, such as proposed benefit, that's updated. So every year it gets updated, and that previous data is overwritten with the current data. So that's one of the benefits to tracking financials here on a project site, as opposed to in a project level field. All right, so it gives you that greater flexibility. And plus, remember, again, you can create custom lists to suit your needs. So if it's action items, break fix, anything like that can be tracked in SharePoint. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up for Q&A. Let me just give a quick call to action. Go back to our website and see what other upcoming webinars we have. We'd love for you to join us. Also, check out our blogs. If you're not subscribing to them, go ahead and do that. We blog just about daily. So we have new information being put out there for everyone. So go ahead and check it out. And then please feel free to link in with me. I like getting requests after these meetings. Love to hear from you. So feel free to reach out to me. Remember, if you have questions after today, feel free to email us at info@ppmworks.com, and you can get a copy of the recording, as well as ask any additional questions, because I realize you may not remember everything from this meeting, and you may say, hold on a minute, I know that she did something and I can't remember where she did it. Where did she find that? So I'm going to go ahead and check my chat window now. So if you do have any questions, feel free to start typing in here. I'll be happy to answer those questions. And what I usually do is I can go ahead and I'm going to stop the recording too. Sometimes people are a little bit shy.